Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and this is episode 261. I'm joined on I don't know, I don't want to say gloomy, but a little bit gloomy of a Tuesday morning. I'm joined by my co-host, Stacy, that is at Stacy Patton 89, who has very nicely trimmed his beard recently.
Yeah, I didn't realize it had been that long since we. Was it in the last week?
It was last week, yeah.
Yeah, like letting the face breathe a little bit.
Yeah, getting the baby face out there. All right, but before we continue, we're going to talk about a really awesome Knicks game that they totally won by 17 points. They lost to the Bucks, and it sucked ass. We're going to talk about that. But before we get started, I have to make a few announcements. The first being that the Strickland has an Instagram. You can follow that on Instagram at thestrick.land. Please give us a follow. We're putting up all kinds of new content on there. We also have a YouTube where you may be watching this podcast. If you are, please hit like and then hit the subscribe button to our channel. We're trying to get to 1,000. If we can get there, it would be a massive help. So if you are watching on YouTube and you have not subscribed, please do so. The Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to the Strickland mailbag that comes out every other week that is hosted by Andrew Steele, aka Doug, along with Dallas Amico, who is back from fighting the good fight against the evil attempted powers that be. Check that out. We also have the Strickland Discord where the conversation about the Knicks never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod, where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful weekly articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. There are further tiers, a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. This comes with a variety of additional benefits like listening in on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day. Whether you choose to subscribe or not, none of this would be possible without you. And before we get started, just want to let people know, giving a little shout out, personal shout out to a friend of mine. He's a rapper based out of Gainesville, Florida. Pharaoh stands for Fuck All Regular Options. He just dropped his third studio project, Phantasma. That is spelled Phantasma. Check that out. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple Music, SoundCloud, all that shit. Give him a follow on Instagram or on Twitter. On Instagram,
is he better than Pharaoh Munch?
Nobody is better than Pharaoh Munch. You can follow him on Instagram at Pharaoh, Faro, or on Twitter at Pharonaldo, Pharonaldo. Check that out. He is a major Knicks fan, but he's also a rapper. So, all right, let's talk about this wonderful, great, fantastic game that I attended. The Knicks lost 111-107 to the Bucks, and I'm just gonna get this out of the way. There are a lot of fucking people that are talking about like, oh, it's so nice. The Knicks were competitive. It was a hard fuck game. Like, I'm sorry. Like, can we it's time to raise the standards. It's time to expect more. This team is too talented. You don't get up in games like this consistently if you're not talented. This is not like some fluke one-off thing where they randomly got up on the Bucks by 17 points. It's just not. Like, they've done this multiple times going back to last season, and they keep blowing these leads. At what point are we allowed to just be like, no, this is a bad loss? Because that loss to me was an awful loss. I know the Knicks didn't have RJ Barrett. Guess what? The Bucks didn't have Chris Middleton. So I don't want to hear it. I don't want to fucking hear anything of, oh, well, the Knicks did. Okay. They were missing one of their top three players. Probably their second best player, arguably their second best player. If worst case, their third best player. Okay. So I don't want to hear it. You did a great job of restricting Giannis Antetokounmpo. You outshot them from the field in terms of field goal attempts. You forced them into turnovers. You cannot lose that game. And the fact of the matter is, when the Knicks get up, when they give up, they lose control of these games as soon as they give up a run. They lack composure. They lack a game plan to slow down opponents. And I think that falls on players, and I think that falls on the coach. So I am sick and tired of giving these guys moral victory laps. Like, no, You lost. You should win that game. You're up 17, 70-53. You were up 16 with about, well, let me just check here. You're up 16, 76-60 with 2:25 left in the second quarter, or third quarter, sorry. By the end of the third quarter, it is a 15-point game or a 5-point game, 78-73. You can't have that. That can't happen. And you've got Brunson and Randall on the floor at that time. So you've got two of your starters on the floor at that time. Okay. A lead goes from 16-5. Isaiah Hartenstein, I have no idea what the hell that guy was doing during that stretch. One of the worst stretches you'll see from any individual player this season. And then on top of it, to start the fourth, okay, like Tibbs has played. He constantly does this. And Frank Barrett on Twitter, Jeff, our friend Jeff, he's pointed this out forever, and it's a true thing. Is like, especially with RJ out right now, you can't tether Brunson and Randall's minutes together to the extent that Tibbs has done it. Because at the start of the fourth quarter, you look at this, like what Budenholzer has done, and he struggled with this for a long time, and he actually only recently, I think like 2-3 years ago, the year they won the championship, really started staggering better. But like throughout the entire game, if you watch it, he made sure to have two of Giannis, Holiday, or Brook on the floor at all times. So at the end of the third, you've got Giannis and you have Brook, I believe, or sorry, Holiday on the floor. To start the fourth, he's got Drew and he's got Brook out there. And the Knicks have Quick, they've got Mitch, they have Miles McBride, they have Evan Fournier, and they had Obi Toppin. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I just, if you're going to ride these guys the minutes he's riding them, the fact that you can't have two, like, to me, you've got to have two of Brunson, Randall, Quick out there with RJ gone. And at minimum, you need to make sure one of Brunson or Randall are on the floor at all times. And it really shouldn't be hard considering this. Check the minutes last night. Julius Randle, 39-47. Quickly, 42-57. Brunson, where is he at? Brunson, 38-39. If you can't manage to have one of Randall or Brunson on the floor at all times of those minutes and two of those three at all times, I just don't understand that. Like, I don't. And I don't want to do the whole fire. Like, I'm not doing the whole we're going to debate Tibbs' future thing because we're not. Like, there's just no point to it. He's going to be the coach. The rest of the year, it is what it is. This is not a hard ask. If he can't do that, then if you can't expect him to do that, then your standards are too low. And if you're watching that game last night and you come away from it thinking, well, they fought hard and they lost the game and it sucked, I'm sorry, your standards are too low. You should win that basketball game. You're up 17 midway through the third. You're up 16 with 2 minutes left in the fucking period. You go into the fourth only up 5. That's inexcusable. And that's on the players and that's on the coach and that's on all of them. It's absolute dog shit. That was a terrible loss. There should be no more victories from that. You shouldn't feel terrible about this team, but you should be pissed off. And anybody that's sitting here and that's today trying to sell you on fucking, oh, everything is great. And, no, I'm sorry. Like, this team is too talented and it's too good to lose games like this. You're on mute, I think.
You said most of it. Can't really add too much to that. And it's just it's some inexplicable decisions. So I think that.
Oh, sorry. I just want to say this: the Fournier thing in the fourth quarter is the one that is. There's actually no excuse for that. He played 7.5 minutes in the fourth quarter. That is a joke. That is a fucking joke. That guy's not even in the rotation when we were healthy. How the fuck is he getting 7.5 minutes in the fourth quarter? Get the fuck out of my fucking face with that. That was atrocious. I cannot believe I watched that. Watching that in the stadium, the three, like, we were sitting next to these two guys the entire game who were basically just like saying what was in my brain. But, like, we were watching in real time. We're like, how is he still in the game? How is he still in the game? And he made that atrocious rotation. Which, like, look, I have major issues with schematic defensive choices that are made during these games, and I think there's a reason why we consistently blow these leads in very similar fashion. But even if you're playing to the scheme, that rotation he made towards Giannis off of I
Yeah,
don't even
he's
remember.
looking right at him. It's from the opposite corner. There was, I think he expected Quickly to split the diff. It was an impossible ask. Quickly was at the top of the arc. There was no way he was going to take, and it was, what was it, Drew and Allen or something? Like it
Yeah, I
was,
don't. It was definitely one of their white guys.
yeah. So it was two high level shooters. There's no reason, like it's very difficult for me to blame Tibbs for that. That rotation seemed
So
like a,
but it's not on Tibbs that rotation sucks, but it is on Tibbs that why is Fournier even in the game? That was with like 5:30 left in the game.
yeah, that was
Grimes
inexcusable.
and Grimes. So Grimes last night played 33-31. Okay, he's played Grimes like 78 minutes before. Okay, I'm sorry. Like you cannot randomly decide that tonight is the night I'm gonna make sure Grimes only plays X
Or
amount of minutes.
Deuce would have been a better option than Fournier, right? I mean, Deuce has been hitting his threes of late. I think Fournier hit a couple of big shots.
He hit one shot. He was terrible. He was
Yeah,
fucking
he had one
garbage.
flip
Everything he
shot,
did was terrible.
and then look, I don't want to pick on Julius, but there was one possession like he hit the three, and then Julius had Quickly on a designed play. Quickly was hot all night. Looks him off, runs another DHO with Fournier, who forces up a three and predictably misses. It's shit like that. That's very like that's not the team. And like I don't want to rip Fournier too much because I thought he made some key plays against Toronto. I respect that he's been a professional about this, but
Yeah.
you
He
got to
shouldn't
take
have
him
been on
out
the
before the
floor.
6 minute.
He shouldn't have been on the floor.
He shouldn't have been on the floor at that point. No.
Yeah, like he had a sub. I'm gonna pull it up right now. He took off Deuce and Obi, right? Hold on. He takes out. So this is about with. Let's see. He takes out Deuce to. Okay, he takes out. He brings in Brunson back for Deuce at 9:26. Okay, the lead is already blown by then. It's 82-81 Bucks. By the way, when Ingles made that three to make it 82-81, I knew they were going to lose that game. Like the entire stadium knew they were going to lose that game. You could feel it in the stadium. It was that sucked. Anyway, okay, so Brunson comes back in then. He still has Fournier in. Okay, he takes Toppin out at 7:41. That's 80. So it's 85-84 at that point. You're right there. Okay. He leaves Fournier in for 3 more minutes of game time. Fournier doesn't come out until 4:18 left in the fourth quarter. So he played 7 minutes and 42 seconds of the fourth quarter with Evan Fournier on the floor when he had multiple opportunities and should have taken multiple opportunities to get Grimes back in. And I know that Drew, gamed Grimes multiple times on the stretch. Like some of those shots, like two of them especially, were just awesome shots. You're not going to be able to do much against that. But that's again, this totally misses the point where it's like as a coach, all you can control are like you can only control so much. So when you lose control of the margins that you have direct say over, that is so frustrating to me. And for Evan Fournier to have played 7 minutes and 42 seconds when he's out of the fucking rotation last night in the fourth quarter, it's a total failure. And there's no explanation for it. There's no justification for it. Is that why we lost the game? No. There's no singular reason why you lost the game. But you lost by 4 points. 4-point game. Those tight margins cost you. They cost you huge. They cost you so much, and they cost you wins. And this team is not in position to lose, not in this conference, not in this league this year. You are not in position to, if you want to be a playoff team, you can't lose games because of a total failure to understand. Like, it's not even a failure.
There was a stat. I think Knicks Muse put this up. So in the last 11 games, the Knicks are 5-6 with a plus 53 point differential. I mean, that's giving away free money,
It's look, I'm trying so hard not to do the Tibbs thing, but ultimately, I think this team will at least make the play-in. They'll maybe make the playoffs. We'll see how that goes. They should be, as far as I'm concerned, this team should be in the 6 seed slot, and they should be leading that by like 2 or 3 games. They
Yeah.
should be up. And the reality of the situation is this, and there are people that will disagree with this. I don't give a fuck if you disagree with this because you can go fuck yourself as far as I'm concerned. There are people that downplayed the talent on this roster last year. Oh, you guys overrate these guys. Quickly is just a Frank, and Grimes is a nice 3-and-D guy, and RJ is just the volume scorer. And you guys just overrate the talent of this team. And we lost all these close games and we blew all these leads last year because we didn't have a closer, we didn't have a point guard. Well, guess what? He got a point guard, and that point
Who
guard,
just outplayed Drew Holiday by
yeah,
a healthy margin.
yeah, and he's a point guard who happens to be shooting 65. He has 65 true shooting in the clutch this year. Okay, so he's got a closer and he's got a point guard. Why are you still losing games in the same fashion? And on top of that, I want to throw this out there because I am going to take this victory lap. How many people did I have in my mentions and in your mentions? I'm sure you had these people. Well, Quickly's on off is just good because he plays against the bench. Well, how do you know if is Quickly actually playing well against the starters? Is he playing well against the starters now? I don't know. You tell me. Did you watch the game last night? Have you watched him as a starter? Like these
That
are
was the most, and especially since his best lineups were with Randall and RJ.
these are good players. These are good players. And I don't care. I don't. Last year's over. It is over. It's whatever. But they were good players last year when people were making excuses for why decisions were made. Okay. They're good players now and they're better players now. And if your standard for this team is just, well, if they're 500, that's fine. And if they, just like Tibbs, to his credit, has made the right decisions with the rotation. Like in
besides
terms of,
Fournier.
well, and just in general, I mean, Fournier
Yeah.
is playing as a consequence of RJ being out. Wait, I'm not killing him for playing Fournier. I'm killing for how much he played in the fourth quarter. But he's made the right decisions with generally who are the 9 guys in the rotation. But because of that, the standard should be higher because
Yeah.
those 9 guys are good, man. And not just
And
that.
if you go by Pythagorean expectation, which I know a lot of people have issues with, but and Frank Barrett made this point. By Pythag expectation, the Knicks are 24-17 this year. That's a 48 win pace if they stuck to that, right? Now you can say, well, they're only 2 games off that pace after finishing 5 games off last year. And I should reach out to Jeff afterwards because I'm curious how much this holds true from Chicago and Minnesota. But he said that Tibbs teams always underperform it. And we saw that they significantly underperformed it last year. And the excuse was that there was no closer. As you mentioned, that's no longer the case.
No true point guard either.
But that's the difference between being comfortably in the playoffs and being a play-in team. And then that's before we even get to the fact that if we do get into the playoffs, here's the thing, right? A lot of these teams, they have some kind of an ace up their sleeve, right? Because playoff matchups they're decided on the margins, right? So the aces up the sleeve that Nate McMillan had against the Knicks, doubling Randall, the way he threw different defenders at him, hiding Trae Young on Reggie Bullock, right? Do we have those kind of adjustments? Because we're going to need them. I think we could give Philly a series, right? If you're willing to say, let's go small sometimes, right? Let's try to get up and down, whatever it is. And that's the thing. We talk about trades. We talked about Jared Vanderbilt or Jalen McDaniels. If we get those guys, if he's not going to use them creatively, then you say, well, okay. So are you saying that if you can only win if you have LeBron, Steph Curry, and Giannis on the same team? That doesn't make you a great coach then.
Also, like, so this is part. Brunson's playing like a star, and Randall's playing like a star. Like, I don't
Mitch
know.
is playing like an all NBA level defender. Grimes is a very good 2 guard. You don't have a weak spot in that starting lineup. You have a very good back.
You don't have a weak spot even without RJ. Like I would say this. I actually thought this was something I noticed yesterday was when we last played Milwaukee at the Garden, we got absolutely roasted on all these DHOs they were running with Grayson Allen. They were attacking RJ. RJ struggles getting over those DHO screens. They didn't have any success with that yesterday because Quickly's just better at it.
Yeah.
And so this is not to say like I don't. We can maybe talk about it if you want, but like this is not to say yeah. I don't really have an interest in talking about whether Quickly should start over RJ and whatever because I don't think that's like really
Well, I think Rose being out of the rotation kind of settles that because you need
right.
a ball handler with the second unit. So
Well, it's also like we can just play all of these guys a lot of minutes. It's fine.
yeah,
It's
and
probably
I
a
think
good
that
thing.
is what's going to happen. By the way,
Right.
people are like, well, when RJ comes back, is quickly going back to 23. If he like quickly played 43 minutes last night, he's played 40 plus consistently. Like he's
That's because
probably
he's
going to get
taking
30
the
minutes.
he's playing RJ's role. That's why.
He's playing RJ's role and he's playing the backup point guard role.
We'll see. I'm not as bullish as you are in this. I don't know what I've seen playing from Tibbs that is he doing that because I don't think he definitely like thinks quickly is good. He definitely values quickly. But I also don't like his issues as a coach, a lot of them are related to like in a lot of ways Tibbs reminds me of Woodson in the sense of they're both guys that did some of their best coaching when they're undermanned
Yeah, but
and
I think
like
why I
you
would
know
disagree on that
he's
is
obviously succeeding now. I mean, we've been able to overcome, let's just say, being a little bit shorthanded, but he struggles at times when he does have a full deck to manage all of that, all of the various
I agree
machinations
with
there.
that. Why I think that he's been playing quickly more than Grimes, for example. Even though Grimes also is needed to both, he's needed to fill RJ's, he's needed to back up the three now, or he needs to be the full time three, but he's also the only other shooting guard, right? I think that and quickly still been getting more of those minutes. Um, so I think that I think if you just do the math out, right? Like if even if RJ goes back to 36 minutes, that's 12 back up there. For Grimes gonna have to play that backup three position, so that's 12 for him. And then let's say he gets 18 more as the starting two. That's 20 for quickly there. And then you have whatever the backup minutes are for Brunson, which like do I think that if it's between Deuce and quickly getting those backup minutes, I don't think he's gonna have Brunson and quickly off the floor at the same time. Let's just put it like that. So I think if you do the math, or even if he plays Grimes 36 minutes, right? That still leaves you probably 24 minutes for quickly at the two, and then yeah, I don't think he's going to like he's not gonna like. I think that the point is that if it's a question between quickly getting 30 minutes versus Deuce getting the difference between 15 and 10 or 10 and 5, quickly's getting those minutes. If it's a difference between quickly getting 30 minutes versus 25 or like Grimes 36 versus 31, at this point I think he might straight up prefer quickly to Grimes, or at the very least like he's not going to play Grimes an inordinate amount of minutes just to keep quickly at 24. I think there's like the only way in which quickly goes back to like 24 minutes is Grimes is the backup, or sorry, Grimes gets 36 minutes, and McBride gets like 15 to 20 minutes as the sole backup point guard. So
We'll see. I'm just. I remember the minutes before RJ got hurt. They were not. I was
he
not
was still playing
happy.
Rose. He was still playing Rose.
He wasn't playing Rose then. Grimes was healthy. I mean, if he was playing Rose, it's because Grimes wasn't healthy. But like you look at the game, like that Philly game. I think that was the last game before. Yeah, that's the last game before RJ was hurt and Brunson was hurt. Because Brunson went out at the end of the Philly game, and then RJ gets hurt literally at the start of the Dallas game. But if you go back and watch that Philly game, he was going to play 17 minutes. And then Brunson got hurt, so he came back in to play the last four.
But he did
And
play
that
Rose. He
mirrored.
played Rose, and he played. I believe he played Fournier too, right? He definitely played Rose, which is a big new source of quickly minutes because he's thrown in the towel on Rose. So
I mean, yeah, I'm just not. We'll see. I hope you're
like I
right.
don't
I
think
hope
quickly like I don't think quickly has played less than like 25 with Rose out or with Rose not in the rotation.
maybe. I don't know. I'm just look. Well, the point ultimately is that like this team is just there's too much talent. Like, and I don't care. Like, I'm just done with people trying to downplay. Oh, well,
Yeah,
Quickly's a nice role player. Grimes is a nice role player.
it's Leon Rose's fault, Shwin. It's not. Well, it actually is, but not because of the roster personnel, right?
That's what it is. Like, I just think this team, these guys are too good, and Mitch too. Like, you're right. Like, Mitch has been playing at a high level. I thought he was really good last night. Like really, really good. I know offensively he had some interesting choices that he made at the rim. But, I thought he played a really good defensive game. I thought Julius played a really good defensive game. Actually, I didn't have a like. I did not love the first quarter, the shot selection, but like he did a great job on Giannis, and he was committed, and he rebounded well, and he didn't. I thought he avoided a lot of the really stupid plays that often plague him. I just thought he played really well, and Brunson was obviously great last night, and Quickly was really good last night, and Grimes barely shot the ball, but I thought he rebounded like a fucking maniac yesterday. He was awesome. He was everywhere. These guys played really well, and I just think, look, when RJ gets back, obviously that's going to be a big help because you have a sixth guy that is now starter caliber, let's say. Um, can the Knicks get more from their bench? Hopefully they can. I know Deuce hasn't shot consistently yet, but I also think he's been put in some really bad situations in terms of the lineups that he's been forced to play with. Obi, obviously, his first game back, it is what it is. We'll see. I thought he was okay. Nothing to write home about. Hartenstein, I don't know.
Yeah. Do you think he has the makings of a varsity athlete?
No, I don't. I would tell him that. I
Three
can't.
times?
Yeah, I can't tell you how deflating that sequence. Like in the stadium, you could feel that sequence where
And it was
he
such a nice pass from Deuce too, right?
yeah, he misses a point blank layup, misses the tip, and then he rushes this floater that he was wide open on and totally
And he
airmails
airballed
it.
another floater. And that's the thing. Remember that shot was automatic for him earlier this year, right? That like little 10-foot straight on floater.
Yeah, yeah.
He's hit like one of his last 10 or something. Like, I mean, look, I understand there's a lot of people who are just, and I'm not excusing it. It almost seems like he has the yips right now. Like he's just playing, it seems like with no confidence on offense. Um, I don't know what's going on with him, but this is more than just Hartenstein sucks. It's like he doesn't have it right now.
He's
I
playing
think
like
he's
a
a better player than this.
he's playing like a basket case. And I mean, defensively, this guy is defensive rebounding. I mean, so the worst part about that sequence is he follows that up by not boxing out Giannis. Giannis gets, and then he fouls him, so he sends him to the line. And actually, at 70-53, which is another big swing in this game, 70-53, he doesn't box out Portis, who kind of keeps a ball alive, and then Brunson tries to save it, but steps on the line. In the stadium, they show the replay. It didn't look like he stepped on the line. But anyway, but the point is, like, if Hartenstein just blocks out Portis, that's our board anyway. And I can't with this guy. Like the margins he costs you are the worst. They're the fucking worst. Because a center that doesn't corral defensive rebounds, the easiest way to get open threes is off that shit. That's the easiest open three that you get in basketball, which we've seen with Mitch. Mitch has done a great job of this, right? Is like he's now kicking out to shooters after he gets offensive rebounds sometimes. He's so bad at it. I can't. I'm over this guy. Like I don't care. Maybe Tibbs is misusing him. Whatever you want to say, fine. And maybe that's all valid. But like that's not going to change. So please just either trade him or move. I don't know. I'm trying so hard to like not be like, oh, just trade him because I'm sick of him. But I can't. Like, I really can't. He's just such a frustrating player to watch right now. And I genuinely think he is killing you for stretches of these games. Absolutely killing you. I mean, that lineup with him and Randall has consistently been atrocious this year. And they play together a pretty decent amount because Randall usually plays the entire first and third quarters and Mitch doesn't. So Hartenstein usually comes in. Those minutes almost always suck. Almost always suck. Like,
So I mean, what would you say? His on off has actually been better than Jericho Sims. Even when one is in and the others, even when
I
Sims
know.
hasn't had to play the four.
No, I know, and it's confounding, and I can't. So if your argument
I'm not
is
making an argument. I'm saying
no,
others
no,
have
no,
been.
I know, and I've look, people have made the argument that like, hey, look, the data is saying what the data is saying, like you should roll with Hartenstein here, and I'm generally somebody who likes to follow data instead of intuition, but I can't. I don't know what it is. I think maybe it's that Sims's lows are actually much lower than Hartenstein, but his mistakes are less loud, so you don't notice it as much. But I think Sims is his highs for this team anyway are meaningfully more important than what Hartenstein provides. And look, the fact of the matter is, Hartenstein, one of his major skills is being a facilitator, and we don't use that at all. And whether that's right or wrong, that's the reality of the situation. So if you're not getting that from him, then you're kind of you're muting what his potential impact can be, anyways. So I don't know. Look, again, I did all I looked at all that on off different combinations with him and Sims and all these different things, and all of it says Hartenstein's been better than Sims. But I can, as much as I want to follow the numbers, this is one where, to me, like the numbers are something's going on there, because I just think Sims has made, and I don't know. I just think Sims is a better fit for what we need and better for this team.
I, I think another thing. So, I mean, I think you watch more around the NBA than I have this season for sure. And my question would be this, right? Like when you talk about the situational term, right? There are situational players in every team, and every team likes to go with a standard rotation. But how often is it that the team never plays certain guys ever, right? In a game, perhaps where, yeah, like where Sims is. I mean, Prez had a nice thread where people do overlook some of Sims's shortcomings, namely that because he's not really that big a dude. I think he has the same standing reach as like Cam Reddish, obviously better athlete and much stronger. But like my question is, how often is it that situational just means never plays, whereas other teams may be using some of these guys in a specific scenario more than the Knicks are?
I that's tough. I mean, it's really hard because you look around the league and it's hard to follow each team, obviously. To me, and this has always been a Tibbs thing, is he if you're situational, that doesn't actually mean situational, right? That means you're not playing. And I would guess, again, there's literally there's probably a way to do it, but I don't have access to this stuff, and I don't think anybody does, and I can't tell you off the top of my head. But like, I think he's definitely more rigid in that sense than almost any other coach in the league. Um, like I think Doc has a lot of similarities, right, to Tibbs, which isn't a surprise because Tibbs obviously coached under Doc in Boston. But even Doc, I think he'll throw Korkmaz into a game. He'll throw Shake Milton into a game. He'll throw Thibault into a game. Like he'll give these guys opportunities at various points. And that's not to say Tibbs is actually this year, I think more so than the past two has given guys opportunities, but it feels like it's like oh, for these 10 games, these are the guys. And Deuce won't play and Rose so for these 10 games, these and then it changes and it's like, oh, actually, for the next 5 games, these are the guys. And then now it's been for like the last 16 or whatever, these are the guys. And that means Cam will never play again. I think that's pretty much certain. Rose and Fournier will only play in the event of major injury issues, right? Fournier is only playing right now because RJ's out. That's it. He's just buying him some minutes.
Yeah,
But
Rose would probably play if Quickly got hurt or Brunson got hurt.
yeah, and that's not like I don't have a problem with those guys being out of the rotation per se. But to your point, it's like, isn't there maybe a situation where
Or if you have three bigs who are playable, I think Hartenstein when he's
yeah, he's playable.
I will say I don't think he's this bad. I think
He's not unplayable. Even when he's atrocious, he's not like he might have stretches where you're unplayable, but he's not an unplayable.
But I've seen him have good stretches. I know this guy can do certain things that he's not missing, like those layups and everything yesterday. That screamed to me a guy who's just not playing with confidence. It's worth noting he had that pesky Javon Carter on his hip, which yes, half his size, but that's not fun to finish over the guy.
He's also like there were multiple times he catched under the hoop and then just didn't even look to put up a shot and immediately swung it back out.
Yeah, so it's something's going on with him. But I also think but you do have three playable bigs. So does it have to only be two when everyone's healthy? Like
no, and to your
point,
or
even if no one's in foul trouble, right? Because sometimes you want to throw guys a different look.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hartenstein and Sims should both be situational. That's how I think of it. And the situation,
but like real situational, not situational.
Right. And it should be dictated by like game flow, matchups, whatever. If Tibbs prefers Hartenstein, that's fine. Like he can prefer Hartenstein and he can tend to give him more run than Jericho. But like I thought after that first half run yesterday that Sims should have come in. Like Sims should have just played. And then obviously as soon as you see that sequence at the end of the third where it's like, what the fuck are you doing? I thought that was a situation Sims could have come in. And like
I think he just sent Mitch in pretty quickly
yeah,
after that, right?
he just played Mitch the last basically it was like the last 30 seconds, the third, and then the entire fourth. But it's like,
Just not ideal, right? I mean, that is a
yeah,
guy. His
right.
conditioning's been better this year, but not ideal, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the point. And I thought what is very interesting to me watching the Bucks, um, and this is definitely not. I don't know if Budenholzer always did this with them. He basically plays Giannis. He plays Giannis a shit ton. Okay, but like what he usually seems to do is he takes him out with like he'll take him out with like 2 minutes left in the first quarter, or like he'll take him out he'll like pull him in the middle of quarters and then send him back in at the end. So he'll miss like from the 5 minute mark to the 2 minute mark or something like that, but then he'll close the quarter, and he does this pretty consistently. So he plays he'll play 9 minutes a quarter or whatever it is, 36 minutes for the game, but like the way he does it to me is very interesting. And I'm not saying I don't know if it's good or bad or whatever. I'm not even. This is not even like a Tibbs should totally do this because this is so much better thing. But it's like I just find that interesting. How he does that and like some of the matchups that you get created from it. But like the point more was, I just think Sims come in and just give you 2 or 3 minutes, and does that benefit you at the end of a game? Like I there's no way to know this, right? But the Knicks couldn't get it. Like they did a great job, I thought, for the most part, defensive rebounding yesterday. But at the end of the game, they couldn't get a fucking board. They just could not get a rebound. Mitch couldn't get one. Randall couldn't get one, even though they were both in position. And like, is that fatigue because you're playing an entire
When you
quarter?
lose 5 or 6 games in the last couple of minutes, right? I know some of them were free throws. A couple of them were just missed rebounds, right? I mean, the Dallas game,
Mhm.
not being able to break a press. I mean, at some point you have to think, if it's happening this often, like, is it beyond the pale to mention fatigue at all? Maybe not every game, but it seems to be a thing. Like they're not playing well at the end of games. There was no reason. Like you can yesterday at least, like Milwaukee is a better team, right? Even with Middleton out. That's not to justify what happened, but you can see they made their run at the end of the third. They punched back. They showed that and then the Knicks fought in the fourth, but it wasn't enough, right? So you can say, fine, that wasn't all fatigue, but there was no reason that Toronto game should have been close at the end. The Knicks had a
Yeah.
16-point lead with less than 3 minutes left.
Yeah, and people will be like, well, they almost did it to the Bucks the night before, and it's like, okay, but like we also know that was that doesn't happen. That was a
Yeah, it's
freak.
not. It's a pattern with the Knicks, and
Yeah,
I think there might be other things, right? But one, you just said one excuse they had previously was no closer. That's not a thing. Hell, even Randall has been better. He made a couple of mistakes last night for
Mhm.
sure, but he's been better in those situations of late.
Yep.
Um, they have shooters and they can defend. So what is driving it? It has to be, I think fatigue. Like you should be allowed to mention fatigue. That doesn't mean I'm saying that Tibbs is some, like ramming speed guy or whatever, right? Like, like it's you could even say that Tibbs has no choice but to play them these minutes. Fine, but we shouldn't. Like mentioning fatigue shouldn't be beyond the pale, because if you identify these problems, then you can say, all right, so how do we remedy this? Right? Is it giving him more depth? Is he going to use that depth properly? I don't know, but do we need to just work on these players' conditioning? Maybe a lot of people say, well, they're not playing any more minutes than other team starters. Fine. Do we need to focus more on conditioning? I don't know.
Um, I don't think I don't know. They don't look like a badly conditioned team. It just looks like let's be real. Look, when the depth on this team has not performed to the level that we thought. Okay. Um, some of that
Well,
might be self-inflicted. Some of that might be
some of the depth has had to become not depth, right? Quickly is
right,
now a
right.
starter.
So
So
that's part of it. But guys like
Hardenstein's been a disappointment.
yeah, Hartenstein's been a
Obi's been
disappointment.
out.
Yeah,
Obi's
Obi
been
was
out.
out.
Rose has
Rose
been
is
more
out
of
of
a
the road.
disappointment.
Rose is cooked. Fournier looks pretty cooked to me. Reddish is just done forever here. Like it is what it is. I don't even like the Reddish thing is so boring to talk about. It is like I don't care. He's done. And Deuce has struggled to hit shots at times. I don't think he's been done favors with the lineups that Tibbs has often put him in, but that's a separate discussion. Um, but like, so I get to some extent there's not a lot that Tibbs can do, but I mean, I just look at so this was kind of like where I was going with the whole Giannis thing. When you pull him in those moments, but you still have Holiday and Brook on the floor, what you're able to do is like bring in a guy like Beauchamp. And I know he had a few threes yesterday, but like he's not a great shooter, but like you're able to play him and get away with it for a few minutes because you still got your other two guys on the floor. And I think the way Tibbs seems to view it is like, and this was like a frustrating when we had a 10-man rotation, right? He's like, he views his lineups like units that need to be tethered together attached at the hip. And that's just one of those things that's like, is that right? Is that wrong? We can debate that forever. But like, especially right now with RJ out, you would like to see um, a little bit more like opportunity where you give, maybe you put Deuce in for quick earlier and then you pull Brunson a little bit earlier for quick. So that way that, there's no minutes where it's just quick and Deuce together. Right. And there's no Randall or Brunson on the floor at those times. I think that would be something to consider. But like, we're almost to the end of the stretch where it seems pretty soon he was listed. So presumably he's getting pretty close to returning. How will that work out? I don't know. But hopefully we're getting close to the point where this doesn't even to be part of it. He should always be able to have at least two on the floor and maybe even three. So that would be great. And part of this is also like, hey, look, like, can you give Grimes more opportunities? Can he help you out if you give him a few reps on the ball? That's something to consider. Obviously, Tibbs at this point doesn't feel like that's the case. But I'll tell you what, like, I'd rather see Grimes get some ball handling reps at this moment in time than fucking Deuce. Like, just flat out. What?
I don't necessarily
Did you say
agree
not?
with that.
Were you singing, or did you say no? Or I thought you said
No,
oh no no.
I think your internet is buffering. I said
Yeah.
no, I don't agree with that. I think Grimes is great as that, but like in terms of just as a creator, when he doesn't have a screen or even when he's running a pick and roll, like he's better attacking closeouts, and there his vision really shines. I like what I've been seeing from Deuce as he's gotten more minutes. He did have that great pass to Hardenstein. He's allergic to the rim. That's the issue, but that's what Grimes was last year too. So I think I am higher on Deuce than a lot of people. I think his big thing is he just needs to learn that once you get below the free throw line, keep going, and if you get blocked, that's fine. I think his passing is good. I think he's been shooting the ball a lot better recently. I expect that to continue. So yeah, I mean, I still think he should quickly should be getting the majority of on ball reps when Brunson isn't in, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think Deuce has serious issues just being a creator at this point in time. Like, I mean, he did have that really nice pass to Hardenstein yesterday, and I do mean that it was like a genuinely very good possession. I think he basically got isolated on Giannis and then had to take him off the bounce, got him up in the air, and then fed Hardenstein for what really should have just been an easy layup. But like, like there's so many possessions where he'll bring the ball up and then he just does nothing for like 8 seconds. And then he just swings it to Quickly anyway, and then Quickly has to create. And it's like, well, can we just like maybe just give Quickly the ball? I mean, I just think there's like ways to use to forgetting the Deuce piece of it. I just think there's ways to use guys in this team that we're not exploring. Like, for example, Brunson's a great post. He's a great post player, especially for a guard. How many post ups do we run for him? Actually,
For Brunson,
yeah, like he dribbles into post ups and creates them for himself. But I don't like. I think that there's
well, I mean,
opportunities.
are you saying you'd rather have him get a seal? Because I don't know if that's really. I feel like he's probably better at dribbling into it than like sealing his defender for
Maybe, but can you?
He's
do
not like
it
a big target as an entry guy.
No, but like, all right. So like, as an could you Quickly brings the ball up, have Brunson come off a cross screen from Randall, and quickly throws an entry pass to him? I feel like, is that something you want to run in crunch time? Probably not. But like, that's something you could definitely run in the first quarter. And like, look, we know that teams aren't playing the most locked in defense, generally speaking, in the first quarter. Like, is that a way to just throw a wrinkle in? Like, these are the things I wonder about this team because I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. All I know is how Tibbs deploys the talent. Like that's the context in which we are able to view this team. And I just think I really think there's more possibilities that we should be open to with how we can use various guys on the team. Like I really struggle to believe that Quentin Grimes can't be utilized more. I mean, I did a post today. Um, I looked up all the different usage splits with this team, and like honestly, man, it's pretty gross how how much we're leaning on Randall and Brunson and RJ as well. Like with Randall and Brunson on the floor and RJ off, Quickly's played 173 minutes. His usage in those minutes is 10.4. Quentin Grimes, his usage is 12.8. Brunson's at 33.8. Julius Randle is at 33.3.
That's
Uh,
RJ. Sorry.
that was with RJ off the floor. So
Okay, yeah.
Julius Brunson on, RJ off the floor.
Where are you finding these, by the way?
NBA Wowie. With Brunson and Barrett on the floor, and Randall off. RJ 28 usage, Brunson 31.3 usage, Quickly 17.6, but they've only played 37 minutes. This lineup, by the way, Brunson and RJ with Randall off. Guess how many minutes they've played?
Not sure. 100?
70.
Okay.
That's insane to me. So I mean that sample size is barely doesn't even matter. RJ, Julius, and Brunson off. RJ and Julius on, Brunson off. RJ's at 26.8 usage. Randall's at 32.1 usage. Quickly in 51 minutes with them has 15.2 usage. Obviously, Quickly's usage for the season I think is at 18 something.
Is that a career low?
Yes, it is a career low. Like the usage splits on this team to me are just they're not. I've been harping on this now for a while. I really don't like it. I don't like what we're seeing. He's at 19.6 usage by the way, Quickly, which is a career low. I really don't like it. I think it's way too much, and I think it's limiting. I think there's more to what guys like Quickly and I mean, look, we saw what Quickly did yesterday, right? We've seen what he does when you give
Well,
him some.
even yesterday, a really disturbing. There were multiple times, and I get it. A lot of people, especially on Twitter, right? You have, people say an early transition three is a bad shot. There are people I saw who said we lost because we took too many threes yesterday, which to me makes no sense. But when's the last time you saw him take a transition three? He had multiple opportunities yesterday where he's dribbling in. He had 6 to 8 feet of space minimum. He didn't take them anymore, and like his usage. And I'm not saying. I think to your point, I wonder how much of that is a Tibbs directive, right? If the opportunity cost is what he sees is great, Randall and Brunson are both 62 shooting guys. He might say that that's the opportunity cost for a quickly transition three, but he has to take those. That's the difference right now offensively between him and a guys like Bones Highland, like those or Anthony Simons even. Those guys are perceived as being so much better because they have the freedom to take those shots, and he doesn't. And I think that ultimately, and the same thing goes for Grimes. Well, Grimes I think is a little bit more empowered just because he can get a shot off at any point. But
But even I don't even think Grimes really Grimes is empowered to shoot when he gets kickouts, but he's not empowered to like they don't run anything for him.
Yeah.
Like and that's really my point is like there's more to these guys. We know it. Like I know summer league is summer league, right? It's whatever. But like you can't tell me that Grimes cannot do more than he's doing. It's ludicrous to me. I mean, yesterday they had a sequence, they had a stretch where like I mean, it's just some of the matchups up at Tibbs is always so weird. Where it's like he had Fournier on Ingles, but then he had like Grimes hanging out on Beauchamp or something, and it's like, dude, Beauchamp doesn't dribble. You know what I mean? Like that's I don't know. That one was weird, but the point is more like going to the offensive side of it is you see what a guy like Grimes did in summer league, where they clearly, as an organization, were like, hey, look, you're the man. Just go do a bunch of shit, right? And I'm not obviously you can't do that at the NBA level, and you shouldn't because you have Brunson, you have Randall, you have quickly, you have RJ when he's back. Like you're not going to be able to just tell Grimes to go do whatever the hell he wants, but like you can give him a couple possessions a game. You can run a set for him to do more. Like we don't even run sets to get him open for threes. Right? The only time like we run something for him to get open for threes is when Julius just brings it up and like tells him to run a DHO. Right? Like that's it. Other than that, it's he has to wait to get kickouts from Brunson, from Randall, from Quick, whoever. And then with Quickly, it's like when he's on the floor. I mean, look, the usage is the usage. When he's on the floor with Randall and Brunson, he's got a lower usage than Grimes. You can't like at some point you can't just be like, well, guys, he's not being aggressive. No,
Yeah.
that split is so extreme that it can't just be like a
And I think
consequence, like a fluky coincidence or something.
and I think a lot of the time, a lot of it is, I think, like you'd like to run more plays for him and all of that, but like I think he's just being discouraged from shooting threes, particularly in transition.
Yeah,
He's
you
not
can
allowed,
definitely see it in transition.
and also they're just, especially late in games, they're just he's told not to push the ball in transition. Period. Or if they do, then they can't. He can't shoot. Right, he has to pull it out. Um, and I mean, I think that's there's it's no secret that's why he was so much more effective second half of last year and playing with. And I think getting Obi back will help because they're going to run more with Obi there, right?
Mm.
But if you really want this guy to reach the ceiling, you got to let him take some of those shots. By the way, for people that are listening and saying, "Well, now you're complaining about Brunson and Randall taking too many shots," they've both been really efficient, right? I'm not going to argue that quickly is a better should be prioritized in the offense over them. But what Shwin's point, and I agree, obviously, is that it's just way too. I mean, are there usage splits that are like what is it with the Lakers with Davis and LeBron out there? Now I'm kind of curious.
Well, whose usage?
So is this typical for like the top two options to have that much of a concentrated
I
usage?
mean, I can look it up right now. I
So
mean,
LeBron and AD was one example that came to mind, but let's say like even like Mitchell and Garland playing together.
okay, so LeBron and AD together is Anthony Davis 26.1 usage, LeBron James 30.1 usage. That's in 485 minutes this season.
So both
You've
of
got
those are less than Brunson and Randall together, right?
yes. I mean, look to some. So, in fairness, Russell Westbrook has played 226 of
Oh
those minutes with them. He has a 24 usage in that time.
yeah.
But like even a guy like Lonnie Walker, right? 333 minutes, 17.3 usage. That's more than Quickly and Grimes get when they play with those guys. What was the other one? What was the last team? Oh,
I mean, anyone getting a 12 usage or whatever that is, like you could be Matisse Thybulle. And if you have a 12 use, I don't think Emmanuel quickly is Matisse Thybulle. So that's just
yeah. So Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland on the floor together, 24.3 usage for Garland, 28.2 for Mitchell. Then you have Mobley at 18, Jared Allen 15.6, Karis LeVert 14, Lamar Stevens 15 and a half. Like it's more equitable,
more talent for sure. I mean, Karis LeVert's a pretty good player, but yeah.
I mean, is it more talent? Like the top end talent, you want to say that they have better top end talent? Go for it. But like, is it really better talent after that? I mean, Evan Mobley's going to be a stud, but like he's not a stud right now. Not offensively anyway. He's not great at creating offense, right? Jared Allen is a pick and roll finisher. He's at 15.6 usage. And yes, some of that is the fact that he can do more than he's got a
Mitch,
little he's got a little like hook shot, he can do a little one dribble moves, like fine. But like I still think like he's got a higher usage than Quickly does playing with those guys. He's got a higher usage than Grimes does playing with those guys. That's crazy. That's clear. Like at some point, that's not just some like fluky coincidence. Again, like that is clearly just how the talent is being directed and used. And like, is that like you can tell me that is good, like that's fine, and maybe it is, but like I don't think you're not going to meaningfully become a worse team if you give guys like Grimes and Quickly a few more shots and a few more just touches of the ball. Like I mean, that fourth quarter yesterday. Look, I know Brunson was cooking, but Quickly hit 23 points on like 14 shots, and he he didn't touch the ball for what felt like the last 9 minutes of the game. Grimes didn't touch the ball. Like I don't. I'm sorry. Like I really struggle to believe that is the only way and just the absolute best way to do it. I really do. Like I don't know. I really struggle with that. And you know, Tibbs is like this is how Tibbs runs the ship, and that's what we have to deal with. But like I don't know, man. I just to me it's too extreme. It's way too extreme. And I've been saying this. I said this even before RJ got hurt. And like I just think the usage splits here are like you're basically running like a 3-man helio. Like it's three guys that just do everything, and everybody else lives off the scraps. And I mean, I know we've talked about this, but I didn't like me and you talked about this. I think during that Kings game actually when they won, but we talked about how frustrating it was that like it felt like every possession when RJ's on the floor with Quickly, it's just like Quickly brings the ball up, but then it's Tibbs calling a play for RJ to, you
And
know,
it's also the method in which like if it's Brunson, I get it, right? Let him ISO. If it's Randall, but he has a favorable matchup, I get it, fine. I do think, but I think there's two things. Like when RJ is on a heater or when Randall's on a heater, right? If Randall is scoring a bunch of points because he's killing in the short roll or he's cutting or he's hitting threes, that doesn't mean that you just beat him the ball and go 1-4 flat, right? Um, if RJ is scoring 40 points, but it's all off of that side action, that doesn't mean you put him in the middle of the floor and say, go to work, RJ, or post them up, which he's still kind of figuring out. You have to keep going to the way that you did that. And then you said three, and then the other part of it, yeah, is that, you want to still be diverse. But the other is like when you're talking about 3 helio usage, it's not even that because the issue is usually when you have one of Randall and RJ with the bench unit, and you're just, you know what I mean? Like it's usually one or two of those guys. So it's 1 helio or it's 2 helio. And besides Brunson, I'm not sure I trust any guy to really do that. Like Randall at his best, I think, is still playing off other players, and he's been really good at that. But he's still not like a give him the ball and get the fuck out of the way against most teams. The only player that applies to really, I think, is Brunson on this team. Um, even though Randall has been a great scorer, it's a different. He's best in a different style. So, and so if you want to play to Randall or RJ's strengths, you have to like, you kind of these are not you're not just giving them the solo, right? They kind of have to play as part of the ensemble a little bit more, certainly than a guy like Brunson.
are we talking about like a jazz band or is it like a more traditional band? What are you thinking?
I was thinking more of a yodeling group.
Okay, this is actually, I mean, this speaks to what we're talking about here. And I actually think this is very, very revealing. Okay, so RJ, Brunson, and Randall on. Okay. And I took out and with Fournier off. I just think Fournier is weird because he'll put up shots no matter who he's playing with. So without him, okay, those three without Fournier on have played 617 minutes. Okay. Now we know, obviously, because we watched the season, we've seen those three with Quickly, we've seen those three with Reddish, we've seen those three with Grimes. Effectively, all three of those guys have played as like the other wing, right? Um, so Quickly in 94 minutes he's played with those three with Fournier off, 12.8 usage. Cam Reddish, 176 minutes with those three guys, on and Fournier off, 12.7 usage. Quentin Grimes, 349 minutes with those three guys on and Evan Fournier off, 12.7 usage. Like, like that's they and to be clear, like Mitch in those minutes, because he's obviously played a shit ton of those minutes, 354, he's got a 9.8 usage. So you're talking about like they're getting like 4 shots and Mitch is getting like 3. You know what I mean? The usage is, and I get it. Like naturally, Brunson and Randall and RJ are going to get the ball more. And there's a conversation we had about like, well, should RJ get the ball this much? Maybe he shouldn't. I don't know. I actually kind of disagree with that. I think he's actually been really good. Aside from like, again, like I've talked about this a bunch, but those 5 disastrous, fucking sick games he had are nuking his entire season. He's basically like 55, 56 true shooting, except for those 5 games. Anyway, um, I get that those 3 guys are going to shoot more, but it's like, and again, to your point, it's like not just that they're shooting more. It's like how you're setting them up. Like I really think that you can do more to get the that fourth guy involved in the offense. I really do.
Even
And
if the
not
usage doesn't go up that much, it's also like he has to be a threat, and like and you upping that usage will help Randall and Brunson's efficiencies. Did you I would imagine their numbers are still pretty efficient on that usage, right?
Randall, Brunson, RJ.
Certainly Randall and Brunson, probably
Yeah,
not RJ.
Randall's at 57.5. Brunson's actually at 56.6, which is fine, but that's also like
That's for
for
his standards pretty low, right?
yeah. And RJ's at 56.3, which is great for him. Anyway, that's a massive improvement. Um, Quickly in again the super small sample for these for Quickly, especially 65.4 true shooting, Cam Reddish 57.8, Quentin Grimes 61, and it's like I mean if anything the fact that those guys have put up the true shooting and the general efficiency numbers they have in those lineups is like kind of why you're like maybe just get the more shots. It's I
Well, I mean, it quickly is basically turned into a catch and shoot guy in those lineups, right?
yeah
Um,
he's just a corner spot up guy.
which still you would expect him to put up pretty efficient numbers. Um, I think with Brunson and
Well, are we
Randall on
sure that
this,
Quickly is actually a good shooter?
yeah. Um, I mean, well, that's the point. Like, you want to see him add more to his game. So I have less of an issue when it's Brunson and or Randall out there. I think the issues come when RJ babysits that bench lineup, and when Quickly still isn't empowered to kind of take some of these. Like if like some of the threes he was passing up, Brunson and Randall aren't even in the game yesterday, and he's
Mhm.
passing up open transition threes when it's like, guy, we're probably not going to get a better shot than that. Just because you're in the paint doesn't make your floater a better shot than a pull up transition three. You're probably going to get, if you miss, then Green's going to be like, well, they shouldn't be taking a shot that early in the shot clock. But the reality is that's not the case. That's a pretty good shot. And also, if you're willing to take that, it's going to open up your drives to the rim because defenses are not going to be able to just sit on their heels. So, if anything, he's to be empowered to do more. I think Grimes in general, they just don't. I don't know that I agree with you that they need to be like giving Grimes more side pick and rolls, but I wouldn't mind seeing it. And they don't do like the stuff that Fournier does with Randall, the GHOs and all that. How often do they even do that with Grimes? You know,
Yeah, no, that's like I agree. Like they don't. It's very weird.
forget even like floppies and all that, which they should be doing that all the time with Grimes. By the way, they should be using him like he's Buddy fucking healed at this point. Right? I'm not saying he's that good of a shooter, but that relative on this team, he has that skill set. That's what he brings, and they don't do that much. And imagine how much easier life for Brunson and Randall would be if if the help defenders that are crowding the paint now have to worry about some action going on behind them.
Yeah, I mean I think that's really the part of it that is it's not about it's not really to me about well you've got to get Quickly and Grimes way more shots. It's like no, just make like to your point, like make them a threat. Make the defense have to do more than just be like aware of where they're spotting up, right? Like you can do more than that. And like look, the Bucks do this with Grayson Allen, right? Like they have him run these DHOs pretty consistently, and that's not because Grayson Allen is like the greatest fucking offensive player ever, but I mean
He
he
might
might
be a little bit more advanced with Grimes with the ball, but not super so. And the
and
only way to
Grimes
get better
is
is
yeah, and Grimes is way better burst. He's stronger. Like he's a better athlete. Um, but like it just keeps defenses having to honor multiple things. I mean, they were doing it with Ingles yesterday, and they got a lot of joy out of that in the fourth quarter, right? Like Ingles had a nice lob to Giannis off a empty side pick and roll or empty side DHO, I should say. He
the
also
Knicks kept losing him.
yeah, they kept losing him. They kept, they didn't know how to cover that play really for a little bit, and it's just like when you even if it's just 2 plays that work, like that's 2 plays that worked. You know what I mean? Like, and now the defense has to be aware of that, and even if you're not planning on going to that at the end of games, and like obviously they're not going to run fucking Joe Ingles Giannis DHOs at the end of a basketball game. But like you have to at least understand it's in the back of your head as a defender, like, okay, this is a possibility. There's a chance that they could run this thing. And I feel like we're punting on the opportunities to even we're punting on the opportunity to incept opponent defenses with the potential for
It's
Grimes
like
and
having a
quickly
running
to run a
quarterback.
DHO.
It's like having a running quarterback and not using him for 3 quarters in a game you're losing.
Yes, it is a lot like that.
To open things up for the other guys. So.
Yeah, and it's like you said, like it's if you have a running quarterback, you don't need to run him 25 times or 15 times.
Run him
even.
3 times. They just
Yeah.
have to. It's going to hold the defensive end, right? You
Right.
run Grimes off a couple of floppies. Now the guy's not going to crash the paint. The same way that when we started loading up on Giannis, guess what? The Bucks weren't just sitting with Ingles and Holiday in the corner. They were having them lift. They were having them run different actions off ball. They were getting Giannis in the ball in different ways to give him that vision a little bit better. And I actually think, the way they've used Randall, I think, has been pretty good this year. But there's just, you have these good off-ball players, and you don't really take advantage of it.
Yeah, and I think the really frustrating thing for me, and maybe probably more so for you could probably speak to this, is like Quickly was an awesome off-ball player. Like that was his entire thing in Kentucky. And Grimes transitioned from being a point guard, obviously at Houston, to being more. I mean, he created
he was
a lot.
a point guard. He was a point guard at Kansas. At Houston, he was basically this at Houston.
That's what I meant. Yeah. Well, this is what he was, but he was definitely more involved. Like, and he definitely. I mean, it's college, so obviously he's going to be more involved because he made it to the NBA. That's just usually how it works. But like, he there's more to his game than just spot up 3-point shooting, obviously. And we saw that in summer league. We've seen we saw that against Dallas, right? When he kind of had to do more. And I know that he struggled coming off that game against both the Spurs and a little bit against Houston to show that part of his game. But it's like that's almost like
deadly attacking a closeout.
Part of right. And so it's just like there's just more to what these guys can do. And I don't know. It's just I hate harping on this, but like especially with Quickly, I mean, we saw that his rookie season playing off of Rose, right? Like there's more to what he can do than just waiting in the corner or standing stationary. Like
that was the biggest misconception of his rookie season. They're like, well, he was just a floor spacer for Rose. Rose actually deferred to him a lot, right? They played together.
I mean, if you go back to last season, I'll try and find this quote, but it was like early last season, there was this press guy. I forgot who they played, but it was like, Quick had a good game, and the entire bench had a good game. It was like Quick and Burks and Rose, whatever. And I think Burks, he did one of his extremely rare press conferences, and they asked him something about Quickly, and he's just like, like he's gotten to the point where it's like there are times where we just know he has it going, and we can just throw him the ball and like go do his thing. And it's like one. I would prefer if like we did a little bit more than just like, yo, go cook, bro. Like it's your time. Like go get a bucket for me. But it's what you're talking about, where it's like he's clearly more than just a guy that spaces the floor.
And it's like, the thing is this, right? The criticism of him, fair or unfair, has been that he's streaky, right? But what I think has happened is now, like last night, he was on fire, right, for most of the game. But he wasn't. Like, when's the last time Quickly's really gotten to take a heat check? He hasn't, right? And yesterday he had 23 points. He only took 14 shots, right? In 42 minutes when he had 23 points, 9 for 4. Like, there's probably more of an opportunity for him to shoot, especially on a night where. So I didn't hate Randall's shooting numbers aren't great. I didn't hate his shot selection yesterday. If anything, like I think the worst plays were late. He had that 4-on-3 and he just forced the ball to Mitch when he probably should have just taken the shot. But I thought Randall's process, but like, why is Quickly on a night like that not taking pull-up threes, right? Not launching the ball in transition, not having some stuff run for him. Because here's the thing: you say, well, we don't want him to shoot when he's having an off night. But now you're saying we're just not going to have him shoot at all recklessly. That means even when he's having a good night, it gets capped to like, oh, it's a solid game instead of like where he could really blow up. And you can also say, well, Brunson had 44 last night. He had it going. I don't know. I think there's more of an opportunity when Quickly's really feeling it to lean into that more, especially if you do think he's streaky.
I mean, and he has been streaky. But I think the best thing that you're seeing with him with the starters is like he's been consistent, and maybe that speaks to like he is. Yes, he can be your lead bench creator or whatever, but there's an inherent streakiness to him in that role, at least at this point in his career. But when you put him alongside other guys that are capable of creating offense, I think in that context, and but you're still able to give him on ball reps. He shows you that like that is a context where now he can be more consistent. I mean, I'll pull it up, but I looked it up the other day. But like he's again grading out really really well as a pick and roll scorer. So if I'm going to NBA.com,
He's by
picking,
the way, he's shooting 49% on twos for the year on 5.3 attempts per game. So
he hasn't gotten better at anything though, Stacy.
yeah, exactly.
So if you go to
Nearly a
NBA.com,
3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio too, by the way.
yeah. So this I know that a lot of people will be very surprised by this. He's in the 77th percentile of pick and roll finishers as a pick and roll ball handler. That's better than Jalen Brunson, actually. He also gets to the line more on those. He turns
Much
it over.
smaller sample than Brunson, but yeah. So
I mean, it's a small sample, but
smaller than Brunson, right? Brunson runs that at volume. So like, I mean, do you think he's a better pick and roll player than Jalen Brunson?
I think there's things he does better than pick and roll than Jalen Brunson.
Passing, right?
Passing, I think that he's much better drawing fouls than Brunson. I mean, the thing is, this is not out of whack for him. Last year he was 78th percentile. As a rookie, he was in the 78th percentile. Like he's a really good.
I think he's a better pick and roll player than RJ. Like
he's a much better pick and roll player than RJ. He's a much, but he's yeah. I mean, look, if you want to say Brunson's better because of the volume that he can do, and I'm not,
and he can get to a certain shot anytime.
Yeah. That stuff is for sure true. But the point is like, this is his third year now where he's grading out really well as a pick and roll ball handler, and
so I think the takeaway for that for me is, like I think that when RJ is playing with the bench, and maybe this will be when RJ is playing with the bench, I think Quickly should still be running point, and they should be running a lot of Quickly pick and roll. And when they should be getting RJ involved, but off of that side action. Where RJ really is deadly next to Quickly is they do an empty side, and they just run a screen. They have Sims set a down screen for him, or Sims or Hartenstein. RJ gets the ball on the move, curling around. He usually has a pretty easy alley-oop read. They've hit Sims for easy alley-oops there. He can get to an easy mid-range jumper, or he can just get to the rim. That's how I would use RJ, but I would still, you have to keep Quickly pick and rolls as a fixture for that unit. And I'd say even if Randall is babysitting that unit, you probably want to run a lot of Quickly pick and rolls because, especially when Randall actually pops, or this is another thing I talked about, but a lot of the times, especially with Quickly, they run a pick and roll and then Randall just sets up for the post up. I'm not going to hate on him this year for doing that because he's been effective. But we saw at the end of, I forget which game, I don't know if it was Toronto or the game before that, we see that teams are starting, I think it was the Toronto game, teams are starting to sit on that and either poke the ball away or force him to catch it farther out. And they're overplaying that post up. And the easy thing is to do is just slip that screen, right? And so but that's a bit of a tangent. The point I'm making is that unless Brunson is on the floor, you really should be going to, and even then, you should probably be running a little bit more pick and roll with Quickly than the Knicks have been. I don't think he should have an 18 usage. End of the day.
But before we continue, the NFL playoff picture is locked in, and my go-to place for wild card round action is DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. To kick off the road to Super Bowl 57, new customers can bet just $5 and get 200 in free bets instantly. Plus, all new and existing customers can get a no-sweat bet each day of the wild card round this weekend. Just place any NFL bet of your choice, and if it loses, you get a free bet back up to $10. Action so good, why bet NFL playoffs anywhere else? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code TBPN. Customers can bet $5 on the NFL and get 200 in free bets instantly. only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code TBPN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. I but hey, look, not here. So that's the not all of us have home field advantage in a bye. Um,
I wonder
yeah,
what that's like.
I
Not all of
yeah,
us get to
yeah.
face Andy Reid in a playoff game on the way to the Super Bowl. So be thankful for that.
Not thankful for that at all because you also don't have to play Patrick Mahomes. So, um,
We have to
anyway,
play
I
Brock
just
Purdy, sir. Brock Purdy, maybe.
yeah, he's perhaps. But don't worry. If the Niners get up by 15 points, they'll blow the lead because Kyle Shanahan will just run 3 yards in a cloud of dust offense and try to milk away the clock. Yeah, I don't know. I still think like this team is good. They're probably at minimum going to be a playing team. It's just really frustrating because like I think they're their game now behind the Pacers. They're better than the Pacers, man. They are a better team than the Pacers, and all the metrics are screaming they're a better team than the Pacers. And it's like
But the Pacers have Tyrese Halliburton, and he's like
they do.
an All NBA, All World point guard. He's a real point guard, Shwin.
Yeah, and you're
Brunson is just a scoring guard.
and you're right. By the way, this was from Knicks Muse, that tweet. The Knicks are 5-6 in their last 11 games. Their point differential is plus 53. Which look, I don't want to get into the look. It is what it is. Those are just the facts, and you can take that however you want to take it. They should be much better than 5-6 in their last 11 games, and I think that's actually very telling because they've missed Brunson for a lot of that time. They missed Brunson and RJ together for a bunch of that time.
Obi's barely played.
Obi's barely played. Like this team, I'll just whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's not like I'm going to go viral here. I think there's potential for this team to go on a massive run the second half of the year. I'm not saying,
but part of that also, you have to believe that 5-6 and plus 53 is randomness, right? This is also what Frank Barrett said in his tweet that like in theory, when people talk about Pythagorean win expectation, the assumption is that these close games there's a lot of luck involved. And we've seen it
yeah,
for 2 years, and we've seen some patterns, and maybe that's confirmation bias from us, right? If we look to say why are we losing all these close games, and we look for things that Tibbs is fucking up, maybe there's some bias there. I don't know, but it's not like you want to say it's luck, and it's poor luck that the Knicks have had, and they're not going to shoot poorly from free throw and all this as bad and all that, but it's happened for multiple years now, and they lost. I don't 2020, 21. I think they were a little bit better in close games, but I still think they probably underperformed their expectation there in those.
I think they played to the Pythagorean that year.
Yeah, So maybe. So I don't know if you were to convince me that these last few games were purely luck that they lost, I'd be willing. I think that the talent to go on a run. Yeah, I think if they really get creative, I'm not so sure. You just said it right. Cleveland has talent, but Mobley isn't a great offensive player yet.
I think if the Knicks, I will say like
I think Cleveland is the matchup I want most.
I would love
As
to
much
play
as the
Cleveland.
media would fucking be nauseating with us playing Donovan Mitchell, like I think that's the matchup I want most.
I would like that matchup the most. I also just think the things that if you're going to be honest about Tibbs, if anybody's going to be honest about Tibbs, we can agree that there's value to his, let's call it consistency, to be generous, his consistency in the regular season in terms of, accumulating wins and stockpiling wins or whatever. I think if anybody's being honest, his consistency, rigidity, however you want to phrase it, is problematic in the playoffs. We saw that when we played the Hawks, and I think that would be a problem against most opponents we'd see in the playoffs. Maybe not Philly because Doc is also pretty stubborn. But like I that's the piece that worries me. But I just pure like matchup wise, talent wise, whatever. I do think we match up well with Cleveland, and I wouldn't be scared of playing them. I would actually look forward to that matchup.
Yeah, and that's where the rigidity. That's why I said they have to be a little bit creative. If they're going to play two bigs a lot, for example, a creative team would try to exploit that a little bit more, right? Maybe you do play a RJ at the 4. I think that would be a good, or unless Obi is really shooting the lights out. those are the kind of things I'd like to see from Tibbs where, yeah, they have a talent advantage, but it's not so big. It's going back to 2012, 2013. You mentioned Woodson before. Do I think the Pacers were as good as the Knicks? Yeah, I think it was a very evenly matched series. Pacers might have been a little. Paul George was really playing at his peak, and he was at least at Melo's level, maybe a little bit better. And Tyson Chandler was a shell of himself. I don't know if he's hurt or what. But those are what turns those kinds of series is the kind of adjustment like playing Copeland at the 5, right? Or maybe not, but it's having an ace in your hole, and
Or
that's
maybe
why.
maybe it's playing, Kmart at 3.
um, but like I just think I'd like to see that from Tibbs. That's like so that's why like Cleveland is who we match up with best. But I think there's ways to take advantage of Cleveland that I don't know that we'll go to, but that's a little bit of a tangent. But on the note of rigidity, that is what would worry me in that series, and certainly
Yeah.
against Brooklyn. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean Brooklyn, that would be a terrible matchup for us. They just have it's not even like the Kyrie is, he'll do his own thing, but like
Katie's playing the best basketball of his career, like, which is
yeah,
nuts. But
I'm a little bit apprehensive about saying that, but even regardless of that, like we just have nobody. We don't have the wings that can like give him an issue. But what I was gonna
what
say is
about
that like
Cam?
yeah, but what I was gonna say is that like there's a little bit of like last year's Boston to this team. I don't think we have the top end talent that team had in terms of Tatum and Brown. But like that was a team that was hovering around 500, basically at the same point of the season. I mean, we beat them. There's that RJ game winner we all remember, basically at this point in the season, and I forgot what I think they might have dropped like 19 and 20 or whatever the fuck they were. They were basically a 500 team, and then all of a sudden they go nuts in the second half of the season. I think they closed like 30 and 10. But like, will the Knicks go on a 30 and 10 run? I don't know. You should never bet on any team going on a 30 and 10 run. But like, look, I you can look at any metric you want, any advanced metric, any of them, all of them, net rating, offensive rating, defensive rating, like all of them are screaming this team is legitimately good. Not like, oh, they're a cute story. Oh, it's so nice they're gonna make the plan. But like, no, this team is like legitimately good. And
I mean, are they worse than those Raptors teams that were like the 4 seed and were LeBron fodder?
no, but the league is also just better now.
That's true.
Like this is, and I guess this is like if you were to push back on like some of the stuff we're saying about the Knicks are so talented and they're underperforming. Actually, I think if you were to push back on it, it would just be like, I mean, you look around the league every single night and there's just weird. I mean, not weird, but it's like you're like people like for example, right? The Bulls are like this. We've talked about this, but it's like they have no future and what the fuck are they doing and blah blah blah. But it's like they're kind of an embarrassment, right? Air quotes there, but it's like they're 19 and 22 or something. Like they're not terrible. Like there's very few games, right, where you're gonna play a team and you're just like, well, this team is fucking terrible. It's just not there. Like obviously you've got like your Houston's, your Charlottes, and whatever, but like
A team like Orlando, like they're not a fun
Orlando's
team to
not.
play against.
I hate playing them. They're all you just play like these mutants who are all like 15 feet tall, and then they have
And they're
like
inconsistent because they're young, but when they have it going, they can beat anybody.
yeah, their team is just like a bunch of mutants and then like Cole Anthony.
Yeah. Um, but I like Markel Fultz too.
Yeah, I like Fultz, but I mean Fultz is bigger, right? He fits kind of like their whole "we're all giants" thing.
Yeah, Bowles with a wonderful story there. Yeah, I mean, you look at there's really only two bad teams in the East. The Pistons play hard.
They've been pretty
And
frisky lately. Killian's playing. I'm happy for him. He's turned it around, man.
yeah, aside from shitting on everyone in the group chat who gets excited about Killian Hayes, but
Yeah, well, it's like I just don't understand it. It's like, guys, relax. He doesn't even play for the Knicks.
and then you have the Rockets, and I mean the second worst team in the West. We just found out is not, they beat us, and then the second game was awful too. So and the Thunder are 18-22, which is I wonder if at some point the Wemby stuff gets too much to ignore for them, but it's a good league. but like I think that the Knicks should finish with the 6th seed. I think not finishing, having to go to the play-in. I'm not gonna say that would be a failure. It would be a disappointment. And I would say if they completely miss the playoffs, that is a failure. And by the way, the play-in isn't going to be any picnic. The 8th seed is the Heat, the 9th seed is the Hawks, 10th seed is the Bulls. We know the history the Knicks have with the Hawks in the postseason. The Hawks have made the play-in, and they show up well in those games. I'm personally not a fan of having to go against Eric Spoelstra with Tom Thibodeau in an elimination game. Um, and then you have the Bulls, who, like, yeah, we always play them close, and they have DeRozan at the end of games is tough for the Knicks to handle. So
And
the
to be
moral of
fair,
the story,
he's tough for anybody to handle.
yeah. But the moral of the story is, they shouldn't. They should get the 6th seed, and I think Tibbs should be held to that standard. And I don't think talent is an excuse there.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's where I'm at. Where it's like, if this team doesn't at least make the fucking play in, I mean, which I
They'll make the play in, but I
yeah,
no, they have to make the playoffs one way or the other. And I think that they should make it as the top 6 seed is a fair expectation.
yeah, I think so too. And like, are there limitations with the roster? Yeah, I think. I mean, we've talked about this endlessly. Where it's like there are certain matchups where you see like the lack of wing depth and just general wing size is an issue. But like every team has issues. Cleveland, look at their fucking wings; they all suck. Levert, Lamar Stevens, Isaac.
Okoro.
Yeah, like they have issues too. Every team has issues. Boston and doesn't. They're probably like the most complete roster in the East. Um, Brooklyn actually have pieced together a pretty complete roster, but like even with them, right? If Nick Claxton gets in trouble, who's their backup five? Like
KD.
yeah, right. And he's out right now. We'll see. Apparently he avoided a major injury, but we'll see what happens. And even Milwaukee, like, look, it's actually really annoying how well we've played them this year without getting a win.
Yeah.
But I don't think that I'm actually pretty concerned about them. And like the Middleton, like yeah, Middleton will be back at some point, but like he hasn't looked good when he's played this year. And he obviously missed the end of last year, missed a lot of the start of this year. Like I'm pretty worried about them. But the point is like every team has issues. So to use the issues that the Knicks have to just be like, well, we really can't expect more. I think it's kind of bullshit. Like Toronto's always been a nightmare for us. But you watch them play, it's like, okay, they don't have a center and they have one guy who can dribble the ball. That seems like a problem. Like every team has issues. So I would say on aggregate, the Knicks probably have less than a lot of their kind of peers in the conference, at least.
Yeah, and I mean, I think they have less. The Pacers. I mean, Halliburton's playing well, and they just are loaded with shooters, right?
Mathurin's been great for a rookie.
Yeah, but
Miles is playing out of his fucking mind this year, at least shooting out of his mind this year, I should say.
But they have more vulnerabilities. I think they're legitimately vulnerable on the glass against a team like the Knicks because Miles Turner isn't a great rebounder. They have some good wing defenders, but I think you can attack Halliburton on defense. Like Matherin has flashed really good defense, and I think one day he's going to be a maybe all NBA defensive level player, but he still makes mistakes too, right? So, they have fewer holes in them. The Sixers, who knows what's going on with the wings? We'll see when Maxey gets back, but bench scoring is an issue for them. The Cavs wings are an issue, and I think spacing could be an issue in the playoffs. And those are all more glaring issues than the Knicks have, right? I think the Knicks don't have a 6'8" wing, and you would like them to have better spacing in the front court. Other than that, and those are smaller issues than I think the ones that I mentioned. No, the Knicks also don't have the top end talent of any of those teams besides the Pacers, but there's just very few holes in this roster if you use correctly.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess the caveat we should include is like very few holes when they have their best guys available. Like, and I know that there's been this weird like, well, Quigley is playing well and he's been really efficient. What does it say like about RJ? Are we better off without RJ? And it's like, no, you're not better off without RJ because you don't have now you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? Like you're taking Quickly from the bench to fill in for RJ, but there's no RJ replacement. Like Deuce obviously hasn't been able to provide the same production yet. Obi's been out. Like you need RJ and you need Obi probably too. And
You
they
need
really
Obi a
need
lot. I
they
mean, yesterday you
really
saw it when Obi played. He came in, hit a three. I mean, he's still getting back into it, but you can see the spacing difference for the second unit when he plays.
yeah, for sure. And ultimately like, they also just need to find a way to get Obi more involved. And it's depressing or not. I don't know, maybe not depressing, but it's kind of like sad because I feel like ultimately there's no future for Obi long term here with Randall being like what seems to be such a central piece of this team. But like for this season anyway, they really need Obi. And they need to get him going and they need to do more than just I mean, he just stood in the corner. He
Yeah,
just stood in the corner the entire time he played yesterday. And maybe that's some of it is like you mentioned, getting back into the game and all that kind of shit. But I just this is continues the trend we've seen from earlier in the season. Like they got to find a way to get him going. Like I don't care what it is. Run some of those double pick and rolls they were setting last year. I don't understand why they went away from that. Those sets were great. They get Obi going downhill, and it's hard to key in on which guy you want to pick on, especially like you run that with like Sims and Obi. Good luck, have fun defending that one. But like they have to get him involved. They got to. They really need the offensive juice that he gives. And the team is like you can see like there are margins where they're just missing that extra little bit of firepower. And I think that's where like RJ being out and Obi being out probably if you want to argue like you mentioned earlier, like is this just luck in the short term or is it a trend or is this a long term issue? I would say like if you're going to argue the luck, it's more of a luck thing, then that's probably where you would argue it, right? Is that like you just don't have that little bit extra in those tight games. And that's not to say like RJ would come in and close out the fourth quarters, but it's like, you know, you have those little stretches in the second quarter, the third quarter where maybe
you could put the
RJ,
team away, but
yeah, maybe RJ or Obi can give you a couple more points than otherwise than you otherwise have. So, yeah, I mean, I really hope RJ is back against the Pacers because you're going to have to score against them, and I don't know if we have enough firepower without him.
yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think also, the difference between when Quickly is co-sharing with McBride. I think McBride has been better as being like more of a connective piece, like attacking closeouts, doing some stuff. But RJ is clearly going to give you more of that, right? And if RJ can come back and get back to some of the playmaking that he was showing, that second unit could be really dangerous. So
I mean, the part of the second unit I'm actually kind of interested. I want to see how Tibbs manages this stuff. Is like he was he was obviously staggering RJ more to play with the bench, but I also really liked seeing Grimes get some minutes with both Quickly and Deuce, and I would like to see a little bit more of that. Actually, you could argue that that might even be as we talked about, like it'd be nice to get Grimes use him a little bit more. Like maybe that's the way you do that, right? Like maybe those are the minutes where okay, like here's your chance. Like you're playing with Quick, it's you two guys. You're gonna have to do most of the ball handling, creating. Give it a chance. And I actually think like the spacing of the natural spacing of that lineup, like forget the gravity, forget their percentages, what all these guys are shooting. There's a natural spacing to those three guys playing together Quickly, Deuce, and Grimes that I think opens things up for Obi. So it would be really,
and they're
I
all plus passers, right? Who they can find them in the post. They all look to push the ball and throw the outlet passes. Grimes is great at kind of attacking the closeout and doing the little reach around pass and all that. So they're all plus passers. RJ is capable of being a plus passer. He's also capable of being a really bad passer. It depends on what his mindset is. But that was trending up before he left. Um, I think that's one thing this thing has that they didn't have in previous past. I mean, how many bad passers are really? Mitch had 3 assists and 1 turnover last night. That's not an
I mean,
isolated thing. He's been passing the ball kind of well.
the worst passer, like, and
The
this
worst
isn't
passer might be Brunson.
it. Yeah, I don't want to say it, and like, look, I don't want to.
That's not a knock on him. There's just a lot of
Yeah,
good passers on this team.
I mean, I think it is a little bit of a knock on him. Not like, and I know you're not saying it to like, you're not saying it like that, but it is a little bit of a knock on him. Like,
There are times he just misses wide open shooters, and you
I
let
mean,
it go because that still turns into like a good attempt for him usually. But yeah,
yeah, I mean, I think like some of the usage, like we talked a lot about the usage, and Tibbs needs to get guys involved more. But like some of that is also those guys might get more usage if Brunson and Randall were better and quicker decision makers in terms of spraying it out when they get into the paint and they draw two to the ball or whatever. Like some of that is down to them as well. So like, I mean, I keep going back to that Dallas game that they blew, which was such a horrific loss. But like, I think if you played quickly a point, he was the full time point instead of Jalen Brunson. Like, would the team be as good? Probably not. But I also think there's a world where like they play just a totally different style with quickly a point. Like you see way more. Okay, they're pushing the pace, and he gets in the paint and he's spraying out to 3-point shooters, and like their 3-point rate in that game was crazy. I would love to actually go back. I'm gonna look it up right now, but I would venture to guess that those 3 games without Brunson were probably some of their highest 3-point rate games this entire season. Um, and it's just like, I'm not, that's not to say obviously that you're not better off without Brunson. Like it's the same concept that applies to, oh, are we better with Quickly instead of RJ? No, like you need all of these guys. But it's just interesting to like think about how we'd play if we hadn't signed Brunson and Quickly was the starting point guard. Like, that part of it is interesting to me anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think you still need what Brunson gives you as a complete scorer, but my larger point is just like connective passers really juice this offense. I think like Brunson is a big part of the reason they're top 10 in offensive rating, but Grimes' development, like they're not playing anyone who's a bad passer anymore at this point. Not even Mitch. Um, at the 4 they played. Cam's out of the rotation now. Not a great passer, although he had some flashes this season. I mean, last season,
just for what it's worth, the 3 of their top 7 games this year in terms of 3-point attempt rate were those 3 games without Brunson. So at Dallas, at Houston is their number 1 for the season. And
which
then,
might have it to do with also Houston being the garbage defensive team, but yeah,
for sure. But it's like at Dallas was their 4th highest 3-point attempt rate game of the season, and then at San Antonio was their 7th highest. So I mean, again, there's no way to know this now, but I do think it's like interesting to think about how stylistically the team would be different without Brunson.
Yeah, and we'll see how that changes. I do like that he's been taking more pull-up threes himself.
Yes, absolutely.
I want Quickly to start doing that more. The fact that there was a season when Quickly did do that, now he just has. And I mean, it could also be Quickly maybe more conscious of his field goal percentage. Maybe that's not a Tibbs thing, right? Maybe Quickly is more conscious of his field goal percentage going into a contract year. I don't know. But I think the larger point is, I think that the front office has made a concerted effort to add more connective passers and strong passers, right? Alec Burks was a terrific player for the Knicks. That was his weakness. Like he's an average passer even for a 2, and that might be generous. He is a downhill guy who, if you collapse on him, can make a basic read, but he's not really a great passer. He's definitely not a connective passer. Kemba didn't play and was washed, right? Fournier was a good passer last year, but you could see that even just replacing Burks with Grimes more, right, and Quickly, and even Deuce, like that is giving more ball movement, which makes up for the fact that they lost a pretty good scorer. So,
yeah, I mean, it's so funny though because when you're talking about like what is the kind of addition the Knicks could use at the deadline, it's every time we talk about it, I'm just like, so we're basically describing Alec Burks. That's what we're doing.
you think so? So my ideal additions are a swing big and a wing.
Well, I think he'd be the perfect wing, right? You want a wing that can knock down threes, that can defend multiple positions, and gives you a little bit of shot creation.
I'd like a little more connective passing, and I'd like more length than 6'6".
I would ideally, but it's like
I'd rather go for a guy like Jalen McDaniels than Burks.
Well, yeah, I mean we can't get Burks anyway, but like I would if we just had Burks on this team. I think.
You think he's going to cost like a lot?
No, we just can't do it. Like we're not allowed to because we traded him, so you can't trade for him back within the same year. So next summer though.
What would you go for a guy like Lonnie Walker? Or?
No, I think
he's not big enough to be a wing, right?
And I also like the thing. I just think all these young guys loved Burks, and I think they played well with him. He had good chemistry. We know that Tibbs thought he was the greatest point guard of all time. But like I
I
just
mean,
think,
that would decrease quickly's minutes to like less than 20.
well, that's a Tibbs thing. That's not an argument against Burks. That's more of like an argument against Tibbs, right? Because Burks and Quickly were fucking awesome together. I mean, I can pull it up right now, but I would venture to guess that their minutes together going back to, you know, whatever, 2020, 2021 were amazing. So Quickly with Burks, this is over 2 seasons, obviously, they play together. Um, it's collating. They played 1,882 minutes together.
Wow.
Uh, Hold on, it's still being weird. I don't know why it's doing this. Uh, let's try this again. All right. All right. Here we go. 1,882 minutes together. Quickly, 55 and a half true shooting. Burks, 57 true shooting. The team in those minutes had a 115.1 offensive rating, and the defensive rating was 106.0.
Yeah, and I would
So
imagine it's better last year than even 2021 because
yeah,
quickly made a huge leap on defense last year,
but
right?
the thing that we need to remember is that they only played against bench lineups in all those minutes. So, but yeah, I mean, like I get what you're saying. Like, there's a archetype preference, and I do agree that they're like the archetype preference would be nice. But man, if we had Burks on this team and we could just trust Tibbs to like not be insane with him, he'd be like I genuinely would be. I would be saying some crazy things about what this team could do if we did that, if we had them still, because I think he was fucking awesome, and he's exactly. I think I would bet his 3-point shooting would vault us up to like league average as a team if we had him.
Yeah. I also think there's some randomness there. I expect quickly shooting 33% from three. I expect that to go up. Deuce is not a 28% 3-point shooter, period. Like, if he continues to get minutes, his percentage will tick up to close to league average. Um, and the rest of the guys are shooting pretty. Grimes is back up to 30. Remember how bad Grimes was early in the year shooting the ball? 38% from three on, I think, higher volume even than last year.
Yeah,
So they're in a good spot. So in terms of kind of the guys, so do you think at what point would they be close enough to making some noise where you might say, you know what, if it takes maybe all of the three protected picks we have, um, but at what point do you start to say, maybe not all in and certainly not trading any of the core guys, but make an offer that's going to like for OG Anunoby that could win? Or do you think that's just we're still not even at a place where we can talk about that?
I mean, the OG thing is always so weird though to me because it's like if you're trading for OG, who is he? You're not trading for him to come off the bench, right? Like
And you
you're
don't
not.
think that the spacing would be good if he replaces Grimes in the starting lineup?
But let's forget even that. Like, is it good? Does it make sense to bench Grimes, especially since the starting lineup has actually been really good? Does it like does it make sense to change things around in that group for a player of OG Anunoby's caliber? That's what I think is the real question.
If you have an
Like,
all NBA defender who can knock down an open three, and it also gives you against a team like Milwaukee or a team like Brooklyn I mean, here's the thing: if we have to play Boston, right, having two long defensive wings to match up with them is kind of standard. And as good as Grimes is, I don't like he's going to be a little bit undersized in that matchup. Having more depth and more options at that position is probably something we need to like make a run. Right?
it is, but I also think it's like there you need to do it in a very particular way. Like I don't know how to explain this, but so like if you like you can bench Grimes to me for like I don't know, just trying to think. If for whatever reason like the Suns decided we want to trade Devin Booker, you can bench Grimes for Devin Booker, right? And I know there will people be like, well, what if you benched RJ for OG Anunoby or whatever? Like that's not going to happen. Like it's not even worth discussing because it's literally not going to happen. And I'm also not very interested in trading RJ for OG Anunoby. I don't think that is a very smart deal either, especially because OG is going to be a free agent at the end of next season. You're going to have to pay him a shit ton of money. Like, I don't like the value proposition there. Um, but like to me, this team, if they can get a Jalen McDaniels, right, for like a relatively cheap cost or something, or not Burks because we can't trade for him, but like some Burks caliber level wing just for this season, I would do that and I'm fine with that. But like I think they need to look at getting the type of wings you're describing. That to me is a draft thing. They need to go get those guys in the draft and then they need to develop them. And
But
and if
that's
and if
okay.
those guys become better than Grimes and you like that to me is what you need to do. I am not into trading for like I think it's different if you trade for OG and then you bench Grimes. I don't know. Something about that
Like if you
process to me
draft
I
like
don't
Jed
like.
Howard or something and he just outplays Grimes.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't like the process of like benching a guy who's been really good for you as a starter by getting like I know like OG's been playing really well this year. He's not a star. He's never going to be a star. For a non-star player, um I don't like I think there's potential where like if you're a guy like Quentin Grimes and look, these kids have shown that they're resilient, they're really good pros and they just do the work and like so maybe I'm totally wrong on this, but I don't like the message that sends to him and I think there's like potential where you kind of I don't want to say you lose him, but lose him like mentally, I mean, but like there's potential for him to be kind of jaded, right? By that. Whereas like if it was Devin Booker, I don't think he would be like, "Oh my god, how can you bench me for Devin Booker?"
maybe. So the two things. So there's a couple things I would say there. Number one, that bench unit would be awesome.
Mhm.
Quickly and Grimes are playing all of those minutes together with Obi. Um, the other thing I would say is, Grimes also doesn't have the financial security. Grimes is playing for his next contract, right? Not yet, but like it's coming. So if you had given a guy financial security, let's say you didn't want to bench Grimes for the message you would send, but if there was a guy on the roster who did have financial security, who you want playing a lot of minutes with the bench because he doesn't fit in maybe with one or two guys in the starting lineup, and again he's been paid $100 million, and he plays a position that OG Anunoby could play. What about moving him to the bench?
All right, can you repeat that?
Yeah, what about moving RJ to the bench because he has financial security. He, because they paid him his contract, so that's not a worry the way it is with Grimes. He's not a great fit with Randall and or Brunson in that starting lineup. You probably want him more playing with the bench no matter what. What about that? Having RJ become like a super sub next to Quickly.
I mean, is that it's not realistic though.
You don't think they would do that because it would cause a problem with RJ or
Yeah,
because?
100% it's going to cause a problem for RJ. Hey, we paid you 106 million, but we want you to come off the bench
But
behind
he's
OG.
still going to get 25 minutes, 30 minutes.
It's not the same thing, and you know that. Like, I don't care. This is the thing. People like when you're a start. Once you're a starter, and I actually wonder this sometimes if this is why they didn't want to start quickly because it's like it's hard to be
Well,
a
Captain
starter.
Pearl always says that, right? Like
Yeah,
the reason they didn't start quickly was because if they had to move him back to the bench, then it would cause a ego issue or whatever.
yeah, and maybe he's right. I don't know. But like, I don't. I think that would be it's not feasible. Like they're just not going to do it. You're not going to be like, hey RJ, we've started for what is it 3.5 years now. We're going to move you to the bench for OG Anunoby.
Yeah, I
I,
tend to agree. I think if it was a move you thought put the Knicks, if they make that move, do you think that puts the Knicks over the top? Because I think it makes them a pretty damn good team.
uh,
If you add
what do you mean
RJ,
by over the top?
like we have a legitimate shot to beat Boston or anyone in the East.
No, I still don't think you have a chance to beat Boston.
We don't have a chance.
I don't think we have a chance. I don't think.
Okay,
I just think Boston's really good, and
because I think that's what the question. If that could put you over the top, I would say suck it up, RJ or Grimes, whoever it is. This we're adding you to the bench to give it that way, and that bench is going to be way better than it has been. And now our our starting lineup can match up with anyone. But but if you don't think that it puts you over the top, then that makes sense. The other question I wanted to ask, and we can talk about the draft in a second, but What makes you think Jalen McDaniels, excuse me, is available
I mean, there was it's just there
for
was a
cheap? You mean?
report.
Like,
There,
why
I
would
mean,
Charlotte want to give up a guy who's 10 points, averaging 10 points a game, pretty good defender, 6'9", shooting close to 40% from three?
what do they want to pay him? I mean, and does Charlotte even know what the fuck they're doing?
If you're going to pay someone, he might as well be it, right?
I mean, you already paid Rozier. You're gonna have to pay LaMelo. Who the hell
When is
knows if they're
Rozier's
going?
contract is up?
What's up?
When is Rozier's contract up?
They extended him after last season, so I don't know. He's
Jesus,
getting paid a decent
why?
amount. Yeah,
Oh,
get a
God.
good shooting season.
Yeah, but oh, God.
It's. I mean, look, they still have the Hayward money. They've.
How much is Kelly Oubre making? He's going to get traded, but
Yeah, he's making 12 million, but he's expiring anyway. I think that. I think that there was also. I mean, this was disgusting, but there was that report that like they were talking to Miles Bridges and like were coming closer to an agreement. This was going back like a month or something. Um, who the hell knows what they're going to do with PJ Washington? I mean, they might have to pay Book Knight down the line.
is he playing well this year?
He's not even playing, dude.
That's like if the Knicks didn't have a million guards, I wouldn't mind that as a buy low opportunity. Like,
That's just because you're a UConn boy at heart.
not a UConn boy at all. I just think, although like that is such a thing, right? The UConn second year shooting guard jump.
Yeah.
Like they had Lamb, they had Book Knight. Now you probably aren't following, but there's a guy named Jordan Hawkins who's playing really well. He's 6'5", can shoot a lot. But yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, I guess the only way it makes sense for them is if they're trying to get off Hayward's contract. But like Jalen McDaniels is the kind of guy you lock up. I would pay him. Heck, I mean, I don't know what the market is for him is going to be, but he's quietly pretty damn good. Like if we could get him for a second in Cam, like why would the Hornets do that? Now if you're saying they would do that to get off Hayward's money, fine.
Well, what if they like Cam better as a prospect? Isn't that reasonable?
I think that's a very unreasonable evaluation. Like why
Is
would
it?
Jalen
Is it?
McDaniels is what you want Cam to be? Like,
But
but he actually has done
Jalen
that.
McDaniels is how old is he? He's like 25.
Yeah, Cam is what 23.
23. Jalen McDaniels is actually 24, so he's younger than I even thought. I thought he was an older guy coming in. That's so weird. Anyway, look, I don't know. I just know that they've talked to teams. They talked to the Suns about it. That was reported this morning.
Which also the trade that they're proposing. I mean, they said a 3-way trade with Crowder, but it's like I also don't like who like what does Charlotte need? They're a rebuilding shitty team.
So they need draft capital.
Or they need good young players. That's what Jalen McDaniels is. You know?
I mean, look, if they wanted to keep him, totally understand. I just think that they are stupid and they don't have a plan, and I think you can capitalize on that.
I would love to see it, and especially if it's. I wouldn't mind taking Hayward. Period. Right? I think we both talked about this. If healthy, he's a good player.
I mean, there's enough dead salary that you're got around on the team, right? That like if you turn your dead salary into Gordon Hayward, even if he becomes dead salary because he gets injured, like it doesn't really hurt you that much.
When is his contract?
It ends after next year. So it's like
so Fournier has the same contract, and then Rose is expiring this year, right?
Yeah, right. So if you're just like, hey, look, you can save a little bit of money for next year, just give us Hayward and you take Fournier. If they would do that,
but would they attach McDaniels to make that happen? I think could you do Rose and Fournier for McDaniels and Hayward, throw in Cam if they want, or like a second if they want? I mean, like I still think that's a bad deal for them, but if they really are desperate to save money next year,
yeah, I mean, I would do that. I would definitely do that. That'd be awesome. But like, but see, like this is where like having Tibbs is so weird, right? Because you're going to be like, is Tibbs going to be able to manage that? Like, is his brain going to like explode if you're like, we added 2 wings that probably should get rotation minutes? Like, no, what do you do? My rotation is perfect. We can't do this.
Well, I think Hayward probably will not mind coming off the bench.
No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't. Yeah, I agree.
So then you have the same starting 5, and now your bench. I mean, think about this bench unit when healthy. Quickly, Hayward. I think Hayward can play the 2, right?
Yeah,
shouldn't be an issue. Hayward, Quickly, McDaniels, Obi, and a big. Like that's your second lineup.
Yeah,
like that could turn up. I mean, like okay, that's not as good as OG and an Obi, but we just added like if Hayward's health is the issue, but if Hayward's healthy in a playoff series, he probably will close over Grimes a lot, which I'm totally fine with, by the way.
Mhm.
And then you have, I mean, yeah, like think about your late game offense with Hayward, Randall, and Brunson. And if there's one thing that everyone's talking about Grimes' defense, but one thing he's really added is that connective piece. That's what's I think helped Randall get going a little bit more of late. Well, who's a better connective passer than Gordon Hayward, right? So
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. So, all right, I think that's a good place to end it. Unless you have anything else you wanted to discuss.
no.
Okay.
Sorry, I'll add one other thing. Be mindful on the draft that the Knicks may be playing themselves out of the range of some of the wings that we've talked about.
Mhm.
There's a lot of good 6'7", 6'8" wings who can score at 3 levels, do stuff. And right now the Knicks are close to 20, and the Mavs are pretty good. So a lot of those guys now, and a lot of those guys have moved up, right? Grady Dick, Jett Howard, Maxwell Lewis are guys who were mocked in the late teens earlier. Now they all look like lottery picks.
So what
It,
you're saying is that Scoot Henderson might fall down.
yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
But
But
we can't draft Scoot because we have Brunson. Like they just can't do it.
I'm saying I'm a little. I think that what they'll have. No, it's not because of Brunson. It's because of Deuce
And quickly.
and Rokas Jokubaitis. um, it's what I'm saying is I was pretty confident that Knicks they were just gonna have their pick of like a good wing, like somebody really good was gonna fall to them, like and not just like a 6'6" guy, but like a 6'8", 3-level scorer type who could defend. Now I'm less confident of that. I still think they can get. There's like a few. The guys in their range that are interesting are like 4 or 5 hybrid, versatile types who can like block shots, stretch the floor, and pass a little bit. But I don't know if those are Walt Perrin picks, and I also don't know if Tibbs would use them properly. But it's something to monitor, and I wonder if that would play into their thinking. I don't know how front offices look forward to the draft when thinking about free agent acquisitions, but the fact that you mentioned that you'd rather get that kind of guy through the draft made me think of that may be less of a slam dunk than it looked like about a month ago.
Interesting. It's definitely something to be mindful of. All right. Well, that is our pod for today. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Stacy, let people know where they can find you and plug anything you'd like to plug.
Find me at Stacy Patton 89. For those who follow me on the other podcasts I do, Believe Knicks, or even if you don't, but would be interested, we're doing a crossover before the Wizards game on Friday with Matt Moderno of Believe Wizards. So that should be a lot of fun, and encourage you to watch it and get some info on what's going on there, including a former Knick or two. So
awesome. I have nothing to plug, so I'm just going to plug all the work at the Strickland. Check it all out. Podcasts, YouTube, the works. It's all there. That is our pod for today. Hope everybody has a great week, and I will see you on Friday.